And on to our first story. President John Mahama has paid tribute to the late Ghanaian poet and statesman Professor Kofi Awuno, who died in the recent terrorist attack at the Westgate Mall in Nairobi, Kenya. The president, who was addressing the 68th UN General Assembly, however, says rather than tear the continent's citizens apart, it should rather strengthen Africa's resolve. He also reiterated remarks he made in his address to the Assembly last year that Ghana will not allow its territory to be used to destabilize its neighbors.
President Mahama said Ghana has been steadfast in its cooperation with regional neighbors to maintain the security of those nations that are enjoying stability and to restore security to those such as Cote d'Ivoire and Mali that have recently emerged from turmoil.
On behalf of the citizens whom I serve, I promise the world that Ghana will not allow its territory to be used in any manner whatsoever to destabilize other nations.
He noted that even on the heels of the terrorist attack, Africa will not be divided or deterred by the heinous crimes of those who wish to disrupt her progress.
Just before I left Ghana to attend this assembly, I learned of the terrorist attack that took place in Nairobi, Kenya. I was shocked and deeply saddened to hear of the many lives that were lost to those senseless and cowardly acts of violence. Soon enough, I got word that one of the people massacred was a person who held significance in my life and in the lives of so many other Ghanaians. Kofi Awuno, a 78-year-old gentleman who had served his country loyally as a distinguished poet and professor, a former ambassador to Brazil and Cuba, and past chairman of our Council of States, a presidential advisory body. Professor Awuno had once even been our country's envoy to the United Nations. On this fateful day, however, Professor Awuno was in Nairobi to perform his poetry at a writers' conference. He had traveled there with his son, and they had decided before the day's schedule began to do what should have been one of the most ordinary and uneventful activities, to make a stop at the shopping mall. Unfortunately, what happened that day at the Westgate's premier shopping mall was anything but ordinary. Professor Awuno's life was taken away from him and those who loved him, just as the lives of dozens of others were taken away from them and their communities, each person with a unique story and with accomplishments or aspirations for which they will be remembered.
President Mahama also touched on the recent election petition.
The results of our recent elections were contested. Since our return to constitutional rule, Ghana has conducted 6 successive elections. These were the first results to be formally challenged and heard by the Supreme Court. What made this situation noteworthy was the reliance by all parties involved on the rule of law. The proceedings were televised for the sake of transparency. The verdicts were readily accepted, and there was not a single reported incident of violence.
President Mahama talked about Ghana's progress towards attaining the Millennium Development Goals, having reduced poverty and hunger well ahead of the scheduled date of 2015. He added that while MDGs 4, 5 and 7, which is the infant and maternal mortality, as well as water and sanitation, has seen a vast improvement since 2000, the number of maternal deaths for every 100,000 births has reduced by more than half, from 740 to 320.
Away from the UN, government is unlikely to meet the Millennium Development Goal guaranteeing 54% of the population access to sanitation and water by the year 2015. This is because with just 2 years to the deadline, only about 15% have access to these utilities. Individuals and organizations involved in water and sanitation are as a result meeting to deliberate on ways to improve access, at least to an appreciable level. Etonam Say has more.
Though the UNDP report for 2010 commends some countries for making notable progress in scaling up community-based approaches to improving sanitation, it identifies areas where more can be done to improve the effectiveness and sustainability of service delivery. A group calling itself National Level Learning Alliance Platform, in partnership with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development therefore brought together the experts in water and sanitation to see how much progress could be made towards the target.
I trust that all of us here know that with the exception of 9 countries, most of us are far from reaching the MDG target. So I'm sure that's why Director have already started saying, yes, we are targeting MDGs, but if we are not able to, Ghana is one of the countries that's still far from reaching there. I'm sure that's why Director quickly added that. But experience have shown that there's no standard way to achieve quick sanitation access. We also know that effective program is difficult to come by with one-fit-all approach. We can use one method and we can achieve it. And like Director said, we're still looking at different approaches, different innovations, because our interest is to increase access.
Director of the Environmental Health and Sanitation Directorate of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, Demedena, is confident the program will help the country make considerable progress, even if it does not meet it.
As you are aware, this country is not performing too well when it comes to sanitation, basic sanitation, access to household sanitation, and it's a very serious issue. We have an MDG target of 54%, and as we speak now, we are just about 2 years away, and we are somewhere around 15%, 14%, and this is an issue of concern. And as stakeholders in the sector, we want to see what can be done.
The initiative would be rolled out in 2 phases. Phase 1 of the implementation is an 18-month-long pilot project that will draw from existing studies and ongoing research from the Water and Sanitation for Africa organization, looking at sanitation as a business, demand-led sanitation approaches, and on-site sanitation. Phase 2 will be scaling up the lessons and experiences obtained from the pilot phase to benefit the rest of the continent. Etonamse, Joy News.
In other news, former president of the Ghana Bar Association and senior legal practitioner Sam Okudzeto has questioned the constitutional basis for the ruling of the 9 justices of the Supreme Court who adjudicated the election petition. At a symposium organized by the Dankwa Institute to review the ruling, Sam Okudzeto said the judgment given by the court did not establish the fact that the petitioners indeed lost the case. In his opinion, the court's judgment should have read 5-4 in favor of the petitioners.
The symposium organized by the Dankwa Institute was to bring to the public domain the errors and misconception in the ruling of the Supreme Court in the just-ended election petition hearing. Several leading members of the opposition NPP, including party chairman Jake Obechebi Lamte, General Secretary Kojo Owusu-Efriye, and Minority Leader in Parliament Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu, were in attendance. The former GBA president, in his presentation, revisited the 2 issues set out for determination by the court. Issues, he says, were never addressed.
The question now is, how did they come by the assumption that the petitioners lost the case? The judgment does not establish that.
He explains further that per the court ruling, it meant only 4 judges had ruled for Mahama to remain as president, whilst 3 had ruled that he was not duly elected.
Both Bafoboni and Doche were asking votes to be cast in the certain areas where this malpractice had occurred. The Constitution is very clear. It says that if a candidate does not obtain more than 50 plus, election must be what? Rerun. So you cannot say that election should be run in some constituencies. Because once the 50 plus is not attained, there must be what? A rerun of the whole election. And so I believe that at the time they were making those statements, they had not properly addressed their mind the constitutional provision. And so my reading of this judgment is the fact that it was 5-4, rather in favor of the petitioners.
Other speakers, including the Dean of Research and Graduate Studies at Mancrest University, Professor Kwame Frimpong, lawyer and founder of the Legal Advocacy Foundation, Dr. Maurice Ampao, and senior law lecturer at the Faculty of Law at the University of Ghana, Kisi Ejabeng, also shared their opinions about the court ruling.
If you read the judgments, particularly of Atukuba and Adinyira, putting too much faith in the polling agents, shifting the burden of responsibility onto them, that they should have exercised scrutiny over the voting and all that. Is that their role? The presiding officer shall. He is the one with the mandate to ensure credible elections.
The same Supreme Court who was accusing the petitioners of using technicalities, adopted technicalities to prevent the truth. They did not allow the EC to produce the voter register. They did not allow the EC to produce collation forms. They did not allow the EC to even produce the original pink sheets.
The so-called majority appear to suggest that the pink sheets were so unreliable that it led the petitioners into error. I humbly ask a rhetorical question, and with that, I'll resume my seat. If the pink sheets were so unreliable, could they form the basis of the declaration of a person as president? I have no idea. Thank you.
Now, the minority in Parliament has described as a failure on the part of the Mahama-led administration government's refusal to honour its statutory obligations for the whole of the year 2013. The opposition MPs at a news conference say the inability of the district assemblies to access their share of the common fund 9 months into the year will cripple development where it matters most. Minority spokesman on finance, Dr. Anthony Akotose, said it is very troubling that government is unable to honour its obligations despite the heavy borrowing which is threatening Ghana's credit rating.
Dr. Anthony Akotose, who addressed the media, said the excessive borrowing from both the domestic and international markets could cost Ghana its current B+ credit rating.
Between December 2012 and August 2013 this year, the government has added 8.8 billion cedis to our public debt in 8 months. What that means is that every month from January, the government has borrowed from domestic sources 1.1 billion cedis. The country is on the verge of crossing the 50% threshold. Beyond this threshold, the international credit agencies will downgrade our credit rating. The figure I've given you of 49.3 billion includes only 500 million of the $3 billion loan. The 2.5 is not part of it yet.
The former Minister of State at the Finance Ministry said it is unimaginable that government has failed to honour its statutory obligations detailed in the 2012 budget with just about a month to the presentation of the next budget.
Government, having collected taxes from the beginning of the year, has not paid a peswa into the DACF account. What is happening now has never happened before in these proportions. It is unprecedented, unbelievable that a month to the presentation of next year's budget, government has collected taxes, but it has not paid a peswa into the District Assembly Common Fund. While government has failed to meet its constitutional and statutory obligations, it continues to make payments on non-statutory obligations to its cronies. A government that engages in so much indiscipline and recklessness in its expenditure pattern in an election year, as the Mahama government did in 2012, will certainly live to reap bad harvest.
The Finance Committee also faulted government for non-payments of contractors, even though it was one of the reasons why Parliament approved the Eurobond. The minority leader admitted they have not performed adequately their oversight responsibility in putting the government on its toes.
Let me concede that Parliament as an institution has in a way not lived up to its proper responsibility as far as that one is concerned. Fortunately for us, we are dealing with a review of our standing orders, and this is one matter that has already come up. Parliament is not composed of the minority side alone. And if you're talking about numbers, the majority side outnumbers the minority. Unless you are telling me that putting government on its toes, the real oversight is left to the minority side alone, right? But of course we explain why we did what we did. We have resolved that from now onwards,
the election is over.
We will do business with Parliament and with government, and Parliament will cooperate and collaborate with our colleagues to ensure what is right is done.
The minority, meanwhile, is planning to react to the tariff hikes in the coming week. Emmanuel Ante, Parliament, Accra.
Interestingly, the minorities news conference this time around featured a representative from government. Minister of Communications Dr. Omane Boamah, who sat through, reacted to the submissions, disagreeing with most of the claims.
This loan is being invested in the gas infrastructure. The gas infrastructure alone lends itself to the petrochemical industry. It lends itself to the fertilizer production industry. It lends itself also to the integrated aluminium industry and all that. And all these will provide jobs, which jobs will provide the spin-offs that will be used to service these loans. We have a situation where after government has taken the loans, has taken all the revenue that we generate at the end of the month, assuming all the statutory funds are paid, government uses what is left, 99% of that, to pay salaries. What that means is that government is left with only just 1% to deal with what? The water that we need, electricity that we need, and all that. How can government provide our needs in terms of roads, potable drinking water, schools, hospitals, polyclinics, and all that with just 1% of the revenue that will be left? We would have to resort to other ways, which include taking some of these loans. The issue has to do with the prudent management of this, and this is how President Mahama has constantly indicated the need for the prudent use of these resources, and that is exactly what we are doing as of now.
And that ends the news this hour.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look again at our top stories. President Mahama, in an address to the UN General Assembly, has paid tribute to the late Ghanaian poet and statesman, urging the world not to succumb to terrorists.
Now, government launches renewed efforts to improve access to sanitation and water, even though it concedes it is unlikely to meet that millennium goal.
And that's it for the news, but coming up next we'll have sports. With the clarion call for Ghana's best players around the world to return to the Black Stars for their last qualifier against the Pharaohs of Egypt. And of course, the calls have been increasing by the day. The latest to add as voice is the Ghana Football Association's president, Kwesi Nyantakyi, and he wants Black Stars coach Kwesi Appiah to invite veteran goalkeeper Richard Ole-Lekinson for the two-legged crucial encounter that will see the winner qualify for the next World Cup in Brazil in 2014. Kwesi Nyantakyi has been speaking to Joy Sports.
Why was Richard dropped from the Black Stars? It was because he became clubless. If he's now playing, it means that there is every opportunity for him to come back, provided he's playing and playing well. For such a veteran goalkeeper as Richie Kingston, I believe if he's indeed playing well and he gets the chance to come back to the team, it will be a big boost to the team's chances of qualifying to the World Cup. Because with Richie Kingston, you can go and sleep. If he's in good form, you can go and sleep that he's the best pair of hands we have in the country. And anytime he got the chance to play for the Black Stars, he has never disappointed. Even when he's injured, he tries to keep it up and keep the post. I need to emphasize that the Black Stars is not a club side. It is open to every Ghanaian footballer anywhere in the world who is in good form.
Now, some Ghanaian athletes and athletic coaches are set to benefit from various scholarships from around the world. The Ghana Olympic Committee, together with some foreign institutions, are putting together the program for athletes and coaches to benefit from modern-day techniques and trends of the sport. GOC President Professor Francis Dodu has been speaking to Joy Sports.
You have to recognize that there are certain things that the sponsors really don't have an appetite for. When you have a big competition like the RLG, and we did the RLG precisely because we thought that Ghana's athletics needed to sort of get revived again. When you have that kind of a function, it's so easy for corporate sponsors to throw their weight behind it. And you've seen a couple of colleagues who are doing Ghana's Fastest Human. You see corporate sponsors are able to come and brand. They are willing to support that. My question then is, so assuming we identify 10 athletes from Ghana's Fastest Human, right? What happens to those 10 athletes between now and the Olympic Games? Promasidor came in beautifully, helped us do under 15 athletics championship a couple of months ago. You identify 8 or 10 under 15-year-olds who should be on our team to Botswana for the African Youth Championships. But the question is, between the Promasidor Championship, between the Techno Mobile Ghana Fastest Human, how do we make sure that these young boys and girls now have enough money so they can focus on training? That won't come from the sponsor.
Okay, good questions there. I hope that they do get answers because really athletics in Ghana is in a really terrible shape. But let's switch sports now. And the male and female senior national hockey teams, that's the Black Sticks, are set to leave Ghana on Saturday, September 28th for the Hockey Africa Cup of Nations in Kenya. 8 countries were initially billed for the one-week tournament, but Egypt, Namibia and Nigeria have had to pull out due to funding. Ghana is likely to join the 3 sides that have pulled out. That is, if they are still unable to raise the 150,000 Ghana cedis they need for the competition, which begins on October 1. Richard Akpokavi is the chairman of the Ghana Hockey Association.
As you know, there have been problems in release of funds from the government this year. And as a result of that, we had to help them to ensure that those 2 athletes, that's Ophelia Swain and Kwame Ado, could attend the event. Without that, they would not have been able to go for these championships. So that's what we did in respect of that. In respect of badminton as well, Abraham Aite, they also went for a couple of tournaments, one in Malaysia and Mauritius. And we are also trying to support him so that he can acquire equipment because he needs first-class equipment to be able to do well. And so we have also, this money is supposed to support that cause as well.
And that brings an end to AM Sports.
Proudly brought to you by Tigo.